let's sew in some sleeves. So I'm using Simple Sew's trench coat pattern for this. I've got 2 sleeves and I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. First of all, I'm going to show you gathering. Now the thing with sleeves is you have a sleeve head that is bigger than the armhole, so you have to find a way to manipulate the fabric to fit into the armhole. Now with gathering, we're going to sew 2 lines of stitches inside the seam allowance. Now first, set your sewing machine to the longest stitch length, which is 4 for me, and it's basically a basting stitch. And you just sew along with a 1 centimetre seam allowance in between the notches that will already be on your pattern for the sleeve head. And then 5 millimetres apart inside the seam allowance, you sew another line exactly the same as before. You want to leave all your threads long so that you've got something to pull on, and basically you pull on the threads either side, so either the top threads or the bottom threads, it doesn't really matter, and you can gather as much or as little as you like. You can see it's really easy to pull them back to where they were, or you gather them up. Then you want to take your sleeve and put it inside the jacket. So the jacket is the wrong side out here and the sleeve is the right side out, so it's right sides together. And you first of all line up the seam of the jacket with the seam of the sleeve at the bottom. Put a pin in that and then pin the whole way round, adjusting the gathers as you go when you get to the sleeve head. Once you've pinned all the way round, you want to check that you've got a nice consistent gather. Now back to the sewing machine, you want to make sure you put back your length to what you normally sew in. Now if you feel more comfortable basting, stay on the same length, baste in the sleeve, then go back to where you were when you're happy with it. But I'm just kind of skipping that step to show you to go back to your normal length and sew in the sleeve as you would normally. Now you sew all the way round, this time with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, or as the pattern states. A good tip here is to sew inside the inner circle, that way you don't have the sleeve getting stuck around the sewing machine. So you remove the pins as you go and just check that those gathers are consistently spaced and that the edge of the armhole and the sleeve are matching up. So now that's all sewn up, you'll see that my gathers are nice and consistent. It should be nice and smooth, and you shouldn't really have too many bunches up on a sleeve like this. And that's all done. Now let's move on to the second technique, which is easing in the sleeves. So as before, the armhole is smaller than the sleeve head, so this time we don't pin the whole way round, we just pin until the notches. Up with aligning the jacket side seam to the sleeve seam, and we ease it in instead of gathering it. We just manipulate the fabric as we sew. So with your fabric under the sewing machine foot, start at the base of the sleeve seam, back stitch at the beginning, and start to sew round at a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance until you reach the first notch of the sleeve head. Then you want to carefully pleat the fabric of the sleeve head into fitting the armhole. Check as you go round that you're doing it the right size, and you don't want to fold so much as to just ease it in very carefully. Carry on till you reach the second notch and then sew normally down to the bottom seam again. So you're all done. You've got 2 sleeves there, 2 different ways, and I'll see you next time for more essential sewing skills. Goodbye.